Welcome in, everyone. You're on the Low Ball Pod. He's Lucas. I'm Owen. And today we got a fun one. We're ranking the Eastern Conference teams and just projecting how it'll all go down. We talked about the offseason additions in our offseason winners and losers video last week. So if you haven't checked that out, go do so. It was a great debut. But yeah, today we're going to be looking at how all those moves are going to shape this year's Eastern Conference in 2025 and 2026. So, yeah, just a fair warning. We won't be talking about each team's outlooks and futures necessarily as much like we did in the offseason video, but more about how we think each team is going to perform in this upcoming season. And yeah, I know we have a lot to talk about. So, want to pass it off to you, Lucas, to see if you have anything to say to our lovely viewers. And then, yeah, without further ado, we can kick things off at the bottom of this very, very scary, dark basement of this Eastern Conference. But anyways, how you doing, buddy?
Doing good, man. Good to be back here with you again. Looking forward to diving into some of these Eastern teams. Loving the jersey you got on there today, repping
Yes,
the
sir.
greatest player to ever step on a basketball court. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, in length at a later
Yep.
date. But today we are here to talk about these Eastern Conference teams. Both of our teams do reside in that conference. And, of course, on top of that, a lot of the talk about this offseason has more been centered on a little bit more out west, how good that conference is looking, how deep they are. And yeah, this is definitely not as deep of a conference as we would see out west, but still a lot to cover here. So, yeah.
Yeah, man, I got the Bron jersey on, repping LeBron, repping the Cavs too, who we'll talk about later today, probably a little bit later on, because we're gonna start at the very bottom, so pretty far away from the Cavs. But yeah, speaking of that, let's kick it off. Who do you have as the worst team in the Eastern Conference for this next season?
Yeah, so there are definitely some undesirable situations at the bottom of the East right now, but I think it's pretty clear who is kind of the lowest on the totem pole. And to me, without question, that would be the Brooklyn Nets. The Brooklyn Nets had a well documented, pretty strange draft night, and they definitely had some chances there to kind of turn around their fortunes and maybe start building something this season. I don't think the current roster that they have constructed is going to be doing much except for competing in the AJ DeBanson lottery for next season. This is a team whose core right now revolves around Cam Thomas and Michael Porter, two more infamous ball stoppers, guys with tunnel vision that might get their fair share of 35, 40-point games this year, but don't expect that to impact the win column too much. So for me, this was a pretty clear choice. Brooklyn Nets do have some intriguing young pieces. Of course, Yegor Demin. Like I said before, a couple of their other draft picks, Nolan Traore, Danny Wolf. Do these guys have upside? They definitely do. But do I expect these guys to be real difference makers from day one of the 2025-26 season? I do not. Brooklyn Nets come in at 15 for me.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I honestly don't even really want to talk about the Nets for too long. Pretty gross lineup. Just with a pretty gross draft too. We talked about how confusing that was, and then yeah, you're centered around two guys who are not known for their playmaking. I'll put it like that. A lot of people actually I've seen get a little bit excited about Michael Porter Jr. as kind of this guy who's going to take on more of the scoring load. But I don't know. In my opinion, he has never really had that creation ability. And I think that he was in a great situation with a guy who complimented him well and I mean perfectly in Jokic. I mean, it doesn't really get better than getting spoon fed by the best player in the world, one of the best passers ever. So I think it'll be maybe a little interesting to see how he does this year and to see, I guess, the whole Cam Thomas thing. But yeah, not a super interesting um team to project for this upcoming season. Who do you got next?
Yeah, if we want to move on a little bit, a team who definitely has a much more promising future. I do have the Washington Wizards coming in at 14. Um, this is a team that definitely has a lot of intriguing young talent. Um, Still probably looking for that 1A guy. Maybe it'll be this year's first round pick, Trey Johnson, who has a lot of offensive upside. But if we just take a look at kind of the core of this team, we have, of course, Bub Carrington, who is going into his sophomore year next season. Had a pretty solid rookie year and definitely showed some upside and flashes throughout it. And then we have the third season upcoming for Bilal Koulibaly, another intriguing young French player, good two-way potential. Offense is still a little bit raw, but I think he can definitely be a serviceable rotation player going forward with upside for more. Like I said, Trey Johnson probably going to be who they project to be their main scorer, maybe not this season, his rookie year, but in the long term, I think that is maybe the role that they're looking for him, unless if they can land, of course, a stud early in lottery next year. You have Alex Sarr, of course, second overall pick. And yeah, he had pretty solid season for them last year. I know he had some injury concerns throughout it, but yeah, I mean, there's definitely some promise in this young core. Sarr can still be a two-way star if he does hit his ceiling. And it is worth noting that they do have a pretty solid veteran presence as well, with a guy like CJ McCollum and Chris Middleton, both of those guys coming off the bench. CJ McCollum, former president of the Players Association, definitely a mature locker room guy to have around and a good young mentor for the young guys. What do you think about Washington this year?
Yeah, I also have them as the second worst team in the conference, and I think you're right. They definitely do have maybe a brighter outlook going forward. I like the Trey Johnson pick, and I'll be excited to see if he can translate early. I mean, he really was an elite 3-point shooter in college, and that I definitely see that translating. The veterans, I don't mind them bringing in McCollum and Middleton in the second half of last year. I think it's good to mentor the young guys because they are just a really young team. Alex Sarr, he's shown flashes. Definitely was a little up and down in his rookie season. He is just going to need to be able to get things a little bit easier. I know he had pretty iffy efficiency, especially for a big man, and probably still does need to refine that 3-point shot a little. But you definitely can see like the build and the flashes is kind of like that, maybe like a Triple J mold. I'm not saying that he'll get really even close to that level, but that's kind of his archetype and like the fully fleshed out version of him, which obviously is a very, very valuable build. You mentioned Bilal. I like him. He's another super young guy. I think he's going into year 3, but he's only about 21. Definitely could be a valuable piece, especially on the defensive end. Some people like Bub. I think he's a good scorer, obviously a little bit athletically limited. And they did bring in Cam Whitmore, and I was quietly a Kaishan George fan in his rookie season, but yeah, not too much to project for impact players this year, but you're just hoping to see a little bit of steady growth, but yeah, not necessarily applying to our ideal topics for this episode. So I think we can move on and work our way up the conference a little bit.
For sure.
Who do you got as the 13th seed?
Yeah, so sorry, just a little thing that popped to my mind as you were saying that. An Alex Sarr comp that I kind of like, maybe like a Jabari Smith Jr. I feel like they're both kind of like that raw two-way forward. Um, Jabari Smith might have a
Yeah.
little bit more upside, but
Yeah, and
move.
Sar is definitely a little less of that like around the rim
Yeah,
presence as Jaren, he's got to kind of
right.
grow into that. I was thinking of it more from like a size perspective, but definitely a guy who needs to make things a little easier on him and take advantage of his size more. But yeah, I like that comp. But yeah, 13. Who do you got?
Yes, sir. We have coming in next. I have the Chicago Bulls, a team who has kind of just been in no man's land for seemingly years and years now. Um, they have, of course, made a couple promising additions recently. Mainly last year, I really did love the selection of Matas Buzelis. I think there's a lot of upside there, and he showed flashes throughout the rookie season. Forgettable dunk contest, but yeah, definitely a lot of upside from Matas. I liked him before he got drafted. I saw a lot of scoring upside in him, and definitely some two-way ability as well. Very long frame, and a guy who's pretty mobile for the size too. I do like a couple of their players. Like I like Josh Giddey. I think he had a pretty good season for them last year. Um, Definitely, I think Kobe White is like a pretty solid guard. But again, like none of these guys really move the needle too much for me. Again, that's why they're landing in my 13th seed. Um, do I think the Bulls might have a little bit more to do before the season starts? They definitely might. Vucevic definitely might not be on this team when the season starts. Of course, he's still their projected starting center. But they also have him. They have Pat Williams, of course, who they definitely overpaid last offseason, a guy who has kind of remained stagnant ever since they overdrafted him with the fourth pick a couple of years back. They do have Ayo Dosunmu as well, pretty solid two-way player. He can hit some shots. And then this season, they did bring in Noah Essengay through the draft. People are pretty indifferent on Noah Essengay. I definitely think he has some upside, but definitely another raw player that might not be good to kind of step in and make a real impact from game one this year. But yeah, how do you feel about Chicago?
You see that picture of Noah Essengay, the one that's going around on Twitter? It's
Possibly.
he got like dunked on in summer
Oh,
league like
yeah, I
really
did.
bad, and it was
Yes.
just taken at the worst
It
moment.
was
He's making like
the
a
kid
crazy.
Furphy, right? From
Yeah,
Indiana.
Furphy
Yeah.
absolutely fucking
He baptized
nuked
him.
him,
Yeah.
and this like picture was taken at the worst time. I just see it all over Twitter.
Little welcome to the
But
league moment.
yeah, he's
Welcome to summer league.
yeah, he's definitely not a 2025, 2026 player. I don't mind the pick. Just it kind of tells me that they're looking towards the future, which is something that this team has needed to do for a really long time. You mentioned Booz Ellis, who's probably that next kind of young building block. I like what he has as kind of little do it everything kind of 4-3 wing type. Definitely like what he has. Hopefully he takes a step this year. I think what kind of propels them up above those other two teams, in which I guess like with potential injuries above them, I guess they have been in kind of the play-in contention zone for the past few years. I think they've been in the play-in like every year the past I don't even know, maybe since it even started. But yeah, they do have Giddey and White, which definitely kind of elevates them to that tier. You saw Giddey in the second half of last year was super effective, averaging almost like a triple double. The second half of seasons is kind of notorious for being a little fluky, especially if you're kind of having that March, April breakout. But I think they're going to hold on to Giddey and see what they have there. Not necessarily super high on his ability to ceiling raise, but I don't think they'll have to worry about their ceiling too much this season. Kobe White, another guy who might get dealt like Vujovic, but probably one of the better shooters in the league right now. I really like him as a player, and he's another guy who can help them push up these rankings a little more. But yeah, they traded Lonzo for Okoro. That I was not a fan of that move. Okoro has been kind of a guy who hasn't really proven too much worth, especially in the playoffs where he kind of can't even be put on the floor. But I mean, I guess they get an athletic defender there, and they're obviously not too worried about playoffs. So let's move on from them. Talk about the next team in the 12 spot. Who do you got next?
Yeah, for sure. Last little quote for the Bulls. If you do have one positive takeaway, the backcourt is just very dynamic, and I think they'll play well off each other. Aside from that, I think they have another dark season ahead of them. But moving on, yes, next I do have the Charlotte Hornets coming in at number 12. The Hornets could be a fun team this year. That could be said with any team that LaMelo Ball's ever played on. But their backcourt can bring a lot of spark any given night. Of course, LaMelo is the kind of guy that everything orchestrates around. He is the primary facilitator and scorer. But then an underrated and pretty injury-riddled sophomore year for Brandon Miller. might have some people selling their stock in him. I definitely would not yet. Brandon Miller averaged a quiet 21 a game last year when he was healthy. And he's an awesome complement to LaMelo, a guy that can play on and off the ball, and is just an uber athlete as well. And then getting over to their next position, the 4th overall pick this year, they selected Con Kneppel. And this is an awesome connecting piece for them. Another guy who can shoot the laces off the ball, probably was the best shooter in this past draft. And yeah, he has some good size at like 6'7", can plug him right in at the 3. I think these 3 are kind of the building block foundation for the Charlotte Hornets franchise going forward. Moving down, they do have Miles Bridges, who is somehow still just playing in the league with no restrictions. This is a guy who did average about 20 a game last year as well, and can definitely be a solid contributor as long as he stays out of trouble off the court. The center position is definitely where it gets a little murky for this team. Of course, they did trade Mark Williams on draft night over to Phoenix, and their projected starting center as of right now is Mason Plumlee. So definitely a little bit of work to do there. But they also did have a pretty nice trade they made with the Utah Jazz. They brought in Colin Sexton. I project he will be their 6th man this year. Love that role for Colin. And they have a lot of offense between the guards, especially with Trey Mann as well, a guy they just re-signed. Yeah, definitely a lot of talent on this team, but I don't project much success in the win column this year, mainly because of how thin they are in the front court.
Yeah, I do kind of like their building blocks significantly more than the teams below. LaMelo is obviously a very talented player and has seen a lot of success, not in the win column in his career early on, and that's the big question about him, if it's going to translate to winning. But he's surely a guy who can get himself a bucket. He's super fun to watch, and he can definitely distribute it pretty well too. And I love Brandon Miller as kind of the wing building block next to him. I know he infamously said that I think Paul George is his GOAT, which honestly is kind of cool because I see a little bit of like a Paul George in his play style on the offensive end so far. He definitely can be that long kind of out 3-level scoring wing. He's a great shooter, and yeah, I'm excited to see what he does in a larger sample size this year. I actually did really like the Kneppel pick. I think he just kind of brings a little bit more of like that winning kind of culture that this team needs. He is obviously a great shooter, but he's not a guy like maybe you could say for LaMelo or Brandon Miller that's going to take these kind of iffy shot selection type of shots. He's a guy who can play really well within the flow of the offense. I just think he's a winning player. He's like a hustler, and you could see that in his tournament run last year at Duke. I really like that pick. Outside of that, yeah, they traded all their centers away, which, I mean, not bad that they got 2 first-round picks for Mark Williams, who famously had that failed physical. So who knows what happens with that? I don't think the picks are anything too special, but I guess they didn't feel too good about Williams' health going forward either. So, I mean, what holds me back from really projecting this team to do too much this year is exactly that. I think their starting center is like Mason Plumlee, which is certainly a little bit of an issue. Definitely going to lack that rim protection there to be too winning of a team. But I mean, I definitely think the play-in is a possibility for them if everything goes right. They do bring in Colin Sexton, like you said, which was a good move. I mean, getting rid of Nurkic, nobody's really going to complain about that too much. I'm not going to say too much about Miles Bridges, but he is a pretty effective player for how he's paid, and he can definitely do some stuff with LaMelo as a lob threat and kind of that explosive around the rim guy. So they do have some talent. I think they are a bit more talented than the teams below them. And yeah, we're right in sync with each other on the bottom 4 teams. Let's see if we can make it 5 in a row. Who do you have at 11?
Coming in at 11, I have a quite a fall from grace after last season. I have the Indiana Pacers coming in at 11. Of course, maybe you want to call me biased. They did knock my team out of the playoffs, but we do have to look at this from an unfiltered lens. They will be without star point guard Tyrese Halliburton for the entirety of this season. So whenever that's the case, it's going to put a massive hamper on your season outlook. Do they still have some solid pieces? They absolutely do. TJ McConnell will likely be their starting point guard this season, a guy who has done like a lot for that franchise, very impactful player, pesky two-way guy who can distribute the ball. Is he ever going to average north of 13, 14 points? Definitely not, but he does everything else effectively, and he can be a pretty solid primary initiator. I just don't know how high the ceiling is, of course. But really, the rest of their starting lineup or projected is not that bad. We, of course, have Andrew Nemhard, who was awesome throughout the playoffs, a great two-way guard who's made strides every season he's been in the league. And then we have Ben Mathurin, who this is a big season for Ben Mathurin, a guy who will likely be asked to be the second option on offense this year. He averaged around 16 points a game last year on pretty decent efficiency. But I'm curious to see if he does have an uptick in volume this year, what that would do to his efficiency and how consistent and impactful he can be there. They do also, of course, have Aaron Nesmith, a guy who I still have nightmares about after that game one. He should be, again, another two-way sniper for them. Definitely a solid piece to have. I was curious when I was looking at this team projection if all three of these guys are going to start alongside each other. I know they love bringing Mathurin off the bench, so I could see them pivot to more of a starting lineup of McConnell, Nemhard, Nesmith, Obi Toppin, and then their best player Siakam starting at the 5, and then you bring Mathurin off the bench. But you never really know with this team. Of course, losing Miles Turner makes that center position a little bit complicated for them too. But yeah, getting into their last guy in the starting lineup as well. And like I just mentioned, Pascal Siakam, he will be their best player this year, coming off a pretty incredible playoff run that he put together, damn near creating a Hall of Fame resume for himself throughout his career so far. Yeah, I mean, they have the talent, but I just do not think the ceiling is there yet for this team without their best player.
Yeah, obviously the Pacers just kind of lit the league on fire through these past playoffs. I mean they played just a brand of basketball that I think has been like just very absent in the NBA the past few years, and the guy who it all runs through, Tyrese Halliburton, goes down in just tragic fashion. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can keep this pass first mentality going without him. Obviously, it's not going to run nearly as smoothly when you have a guy who can distribute it the way Halliburton does without turning the ball over. But I think this is a team that, hypothetically, they could kind of build off that identity that they've formed so strongly and just kind of work it around these nice little pieces that they have. But it is going to be tough. And I think losing Miles Turner does just kill. I mean, you don't have a replacement for him at the 5. Right now they're projected to be starting like, I don't know, like Tony Bradley or Isaiah Jackson at the 5. Jarris Walker is like kind of an interesting piece, but I don't know if he really has the size that you want at the 5. Yeah, it is a kind of a disappointing and dismal discussion about this team just versus what it could have been if obviously Halliburton was there. But you're right, I do like Nemhard, Nesmith as kind of ancillary pieces that are going to play good defense, potentially hit their shots. Mathurin, yeah, big year for him. I'll be excited to see what he can do. I've always liked his ability to create for himself. He's a great athlete. So, I mean, he has an opportunity here to take a step, and that'll be interesting to see. I think that's probably the most interesting storyline about this team going into the year. And yeah, it's going to be the Siakam show outside of that. So, he had a great run in these playoffs, but yeah, definitely a little disappointing for the Pacers after this. But I am right there with you. I also have them at my, what was it, the 11 spot.
11. Yeah, I
Um,
just one more thing to add before we move on. I do think the main two guys that kind of are going to determine how the season goes for the Pacers are, like you said, Ben Matherin and then Andrew Nemhard. Can we see either of these guys average like 18 or more a game on solid efficiency throughout the entire course of a season? If you think the answer to that is yes, you can honestly project this team to do a little bit better than where we have them. I just have a
mhm.
lot of question marks about the season long consistency, so mainly why I have them at 11.
Yeah. And they definitely showed those flashes. So it's just about doing that more often, like you said. I guess we'll move on to that. And I think this starts, depending on who you have. I'm not sure who you have here, but I think this starts maybe um, another tier of teams who are really going to be, I think, pushing for the playoffs. Who do you have at your 10 spot?
So this is the number 10 spot. This would be the team that I'm predicting to sneak into the last play-in spot here in the Eastern Conference. I have the Boston Celtics, your very own team. Another team that finds itself in a similar boat to the Pacers, of course, losing superstar Jason Tatum for the entirety of this season. I am seeing a lot of video of Tatum walking around, no boot, anything like that, which I'm sure has
There's
been
no way.
something lovely for you to see. But yeah, past any of that speculation, we definitely don't expect to see Tatum on the court for the 25-26 season. And this obviously creates a massive hole for the Boston Celtics, a team that found themselves also being sellers this offseason, of course, with the departures of both Kristaps Porzingis and Drew Holiday, and not getting much in return besides a young, promising player in Anthony Simons, a guy that I definitely like and project to be their starting point guard on opening day, assuming they don't move him further. Um, but yeah, this team has about four players that I can feel good about and trust, being Anthony Simons, Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, and the guy who is going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting this year for the team, Jaylen Brown. This former Finals MVP is really going to have to show what he has this year. And I'm personally a big fan of Jaylen Brown's game. I love his two-way ability. And yeah, I think him as the first option this year, we could see some crazy stat lines. I'm just not sure what the win column is going to look like for this team at the end of the year. Um, yeah, Derek White, of course, an awesome two-way player, one of the best role players in the league, and a guy who probably going to be asked to be a good amount more than a role player this season. Kind of curious to see what Derek White's averages are going to look like this year. Is he a guy that can touch 20 points a game? Potentially. I'm not sure if it'll happen, but I could see it happen. Another similar question I have is with someone like Peyton Pritchard. Can Peyton Pritchard get up to 18 points a game and maintain the stellar efficiency that he showed last season? Um, just again, these teams that are in the lower tiers for me are mainly just teams that I have a lot of question marks about. And with the Boston Celtics, of course, the main blemish on this roster is that front court. They're projected to be starting Georges Niang and Neemias Queta as their starting 4 and 5. Not something that you want to hear from a team that just hosted the Larry O'Brien 2 years ago. How you feel about your team this year?
I mean, it sucks, man. It definitely sucks to see the roster like this. And yeah, it all happened so fast when you have just an injury that's as devastating as the Tatum one. I have seen those videos of him walking around in the boot, but there's obviously no real chance that he comes back this year. And honestly, I don't want him to. I mean, we
No need to
this
force it.
there's not too much of a window. Obviously, with the center play, that's going to be a very, very tough watch. I don't know if Keita actually will be the guy, or they brought in Luca Garza, or I mean, they got I think Xavier Tillman still, but it's tough to see. But yeah, I guess try to shift towards the positives. Like you said, I am very excited to see what Derek White can do in an elevated role. I do think that he can get to that 20 point per game mark is just kind of one of the best shooters in the league and a guy who can just do a little bit of ball handling. He can set some guys up a little bit. I think he's just a really positive player, and I think he's just going to do a little bit better in a increased role. It is all going to revolve around Jaylen Brown. So I guess I'll be excited to see what he can do as a number one, but it is a little hard to get excited about my team this year. Anthony Simons, we bring him in, but he is obviously not known for his defensive abilities, and yeah, he's on kind of a expiring contract here, so it'll be interesting to see what we do with him moving forward. I know that there have been talks about potentially trading him before the deadline or something like that. Pritchard, like you mentioned, obviously going to have to step up. I do have them one spot higher than you. I think that the Celtics just have a little bit more of the, like, I know it sounds a little bit corny to say, but they do have that winning identity, and that obviously still kind of the DNA that brought this team a championship. I think that playing the type of basketball that Joe Mazzulla wants to play, you can have your arguments about how it's gonna translate in the playoffs or if it's really good for the game, but chucking up threes like the Celtics do, the numbers game that the Celtics play, it is going to result in some regular season success, as we've seen the past few years. And they definitely have guys who can shoot the three well. The guys you mentioned, like 1 through 4, really, if I think they might start Hauser over Niang potentially, but I mean, I don't really want to accept the fact that Niang's even on my team, man, but he can, I guess, shoot it a little bit if he's in. I think it's just going to be a complete like chalk fest, like Joe Mazzulla going psycho this year. So I do think that guys like Pritchard are going to be able to bump those averages up a little bit. We have a guy in Baylor Shireman who didn't get a lot of playing time last year, but showed some flashes to fit into the scheme that way. So I do think that the Celtics able to mix that. Hopefully they can get a little. I'm worried about the defense for sure. Kata is an okay rim protector. I guess maybe that's where you can project him as the starter. And then obviously White and Brown are two pretty elite perimeter defenders. Hauser can hold his own. Simons, as I mentioned, is not that type of defender. So, I mean, the Celtics have been great on both sides in the regular season the past few years and in the playoffs. So that's definitely going to be the big question. But they, I think that they will be able to put up points. It's just about that balance, and I think things could get ugly with the way this team is coached and the roster that they have. Yeah, it's a sad conversation, but it's my team, and I'm gonna rock with them. I
Hey,
will, but it'll be interesting to see what the whole draft situation looks like. I mean, I know Jaylen Brown is coming off meniscus surgery, so I'm not 100% sure if he'll be able to hop right in right away at the beginning of the season. And if he's not playing, I mean, it's really grim. And if they get off to like a really, really rough start, I wonder how much they'll even be pushing for it. I know that the Celtics are an organization that always has one, and they um, are always going to try to be a competitive team. But if it's just looking that grim, the best option might just be to try to secure another pick, where that becomes a really interesting conversation for another day. We're not going to get too far in the future right now, but I actually did have them above the Toronto Raptors, who you, I guess, have a little bit higher. Do you have them in your next seed?
so I actually have the Raptors at my 8 spot.
Oh, okay.
But
You
if you
like
want
the
to touch on them
Raptors?
a little bit, totally fine with that. I just want to leave one last quote for the Celtics conversation. If Jaylen Brown does suit up, like you said, 39 career games without Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown averages north of 27 points with 7 rebounds and 4 assists. So definitely some upside there for Brown, and a guy who has proven he can explode without their best player.
Yeah. I mean, I have no doubt that Brown's going to be definitely scoring a lot more this year and doing some of that. Just the question is if he's going to be able to do some of the playmaking stuff, that the connective stuff that Tatum has done so well for this team, making those decisions. And a lot of people question that about Jaylen Brown. So he has an opportunity to kind of ramp that up this year, and I'd love to see him kind of take strides in that game, refine his handle a little bit, start passing the ball a little bit better. I would love to see that, but that's definitely the question around him. But yeah, I think he's gonna probably be above 25 points per game if he does play, and if he has a good good setup out there to do it. So yeah, you want to I had the Raptors in my 10 slot.
Yeah,
You're a
we
little bit higher on them. What do you think? What's propelling the Raptors up for you?
yeah, let's talk about them for a little bit. So to me, I'm just I know people have their questions about the fit from the Raptors starting five, but I am personally very high on this starting five. I think that there is a high ceiling for these five guys playing together. Is there a little bit more shooting to be desired from this five? Maybe, but outside of that, they do everything else very solid. I mean, if we want to start at the top, Knicks legend Emmanuel Quickly, a guy who was injury riddled through all of last season. He was actually my pick last year to win Most Improved Player, and as you can probably guess, he did not. He was not eligible for that award. But this is a guy who, when Jalen Brunson was out for us and Emmanuel quickly stepped in as our starting point guard for stretches, this is a guy that can carry the offense. Like, he can go for 30, 35 if you need him to. He can distribute the ball. He can shoot. He's an underrated defender. He has a long wingspan and can really sit down on that end if he wants to. I think Quickly is an awesome starting point guard, and as long as he can stay healthy this year, I project a big season for him. Second, Knicks legend in the starting lineup, RJ Barrett. RJ is, he had an up and down tenure with my team, but I still do think he's a very solid starter. This is a guy who's averaged over 20 points for multiple seasons now. He does have some efficiency issues, some consistency. His outside the arc shot is not the prettiest. But at the end of the day, this is still a shooting guard who plays both ways and is averaging 21, 6, and 5. So definitely a great guy to have at your starting two spot. Moving down, another guy who just had an injury-riddled season last year, Brandon Ingram. A guy who they made a trade for, and he still has not played his first game in a Raptors jersey. Looking forward to seeing that this year, because to me, this guy's just a good connecting piece for them in the fact that he is an outside shooter, he can create his own shot, and where he does fall short, which is on the defensive end, they can really make up for that at each of the other four spots with Quickly, Barrett, and then a pretty great defensive front court of Scotty Barnes and Jakob Poeltl. Of course, Scotty Barnes is probably the most exciting piece in the starting lineup, a guy that they took a gamble on with the fourth overall pick a couple of years ago, and it's paid dividends so far. Barnes made his first All-Star team last season, averaging around 19, 8, and 6. And he is just this big mobile forward who can kind of run the offense if he needs to. He's a great playmaker for his size. Again, the shortcoming with Scotty Barnes is the outside shot there, but even there, he's kind of made some significant improvements. But he's a great defender. He can guard 1 through 5. And I just love a forward like this. It's really versatile on both ends. I think it makes the game a lot easier for everyone else on the team. And then a pretty nice starting center, Jakob Poeltl, a guy who's going to defend and rebound and be another connecting piece for the team. What do you think about this team here?
As I hear you talk about it, I definitely can see the case for them being above the Celtics. I mean, my big problem is just like I think it's really a pretty gross fit. I mean, you have four guys in that starting lineup who I wouldn't really trust to see the ball go through when they're chucking it up from three. I mean, Scotty Barnes is probably one of the worst shooters that actually does shoot in the NBA. He just hasn't been able to find that consistent scoring ability. But I mean, you're right. He does do a lot of the other things right. Brandon Ingram, just it's a head scratching move bringing him in. I mean, they lock this team into long-term contracts all the way around, which I think is probably where most of my frustration is stemming. But I mean, Ingram, I just find it a little bit redundant in terms of what he's going to do next to a guy like Barrett, and they have both these guys for the long run. I mean, Ingram is not necessarily the best floor spacer in Barrett. I mean, while he has gotten a little bit, he has probably taken a little bit of a step up since he got to Toronto. Is just I don't know if he's really an effective winning basketball player. He definitely has he has improved. He's improved his playmaking. He's improved his shooting a little bit, but still not too great in that area. I know that he was around like 30 mid 30s in his 3-point percentage. It is going to come down a lot too quickly. Who obviously can use that pull up three whenever he can, but I don't like the way these pieces fit together, and I haven't seen anything from the Raptors that has necessarily encouraged me. I don't hate all the pieces individually. I think these guys are talented. I know that Ingram can do some of those connective things you were talking about. I see the same from Scotty, but I just have trouble picturing what this team is really going to look like out on the floor. But you're right that they do certainly have more talent than the Celtics, and maybe it's a little biased from me, but yeah, I mean they signed Podol back long term. They're all solid players. It's just it's confusing to me just how this team comes together. I like Grady Dick off the bench. I think he's a guy that does give this team a little bit of what they need, and a lot of people like Jacoby Walter as a defender. But I mean, I definitely have some questions about the front or not the front court, the 1 through 3 defensively, and I just I can't really picture the offense too well, but ultimately probably a little bit better than all the questions surrounding the Celtics. So I think that's fair. But you had them 2 spots above. You have them at the 8 spot. Who's at your 9 spot?
Yeah, I do have the Raptors at 8. And one other thing I did just want to briefly touch on for them. My favorite part of Brandon Ingram for them is all the other starters. I like their game, but they're all lacking kind of that in between game, right? And that's where Brandon Ingram kind of makes his money. Um, this is an art that was lost in the NBA for a while, but I feel like guys like SGA have kind of brought back that in between game and have kind of showed how important it can be if you're very efficient from that area. So I think this is a good spot for Brandon Ingram to play in his flag and maybe be a 22, 23 game scorer and the leading scorer on this team. Again, do they have those questions that you mentioned? Definitely. The shooting leaves a lot to be desired. Grady Dick's going to have to be a knockdown shooter off the bench for them this year. Also like Darko Rajakovic a lot. That guy brings a lot of energy, and I think he's a good locker room guy too. But yeah, those are some of the reasons I did have them over at 8.
I
But if
think
we did want,
a lot of my confusion is just like more so with like the off ball and like catch and shoot ability. It's like a lot of these guys aren't very used to playing off the ball. I mean, Barrett has definitely adapted to that a little bit more as he's gone through his career and not necessarily been valued as the was he the number 3 pick that he was at the beginning. But that it's just it's going to get a little bit weird when there's only one ball, and pretty much all of these guys in the starting lineup outside of Quickly, who even Quickly isn't necessarily like a catch and shoot guy. He's more of a take it up, pull up. I mean, he's got insane range, but I just that's why I just can't really imagine it happening. It's really clunky. And it's yeah. I mean, hopefully Ingram can come in and be that connective guy, and hopefully these guys learn to play off the ball a little bit better. But it'll be interesting to see how they shape up, and obviously they are committed to this starting 5 for the foreseeable future. So they're gonna definitely learn how to play with each other. They're gonna have to learn to play with each other for better or for worse. We'll see how it goes.
most definitely. Yeah. So, yeah, they like you said, this team can have a lot of different outcomes, but yeah, I thought 8 was kind of a fair spot for them. But if I do want to move back, the team that I had at 9, I had the Milwaukee Bucks there. Um, this is a team that is kind of difficult to project this season. They definitely have one of the best front courts in the league, but outside of that, the rest of their roster leaves a lot to be desired. And I mean a lot. I mean, if you look at this team's outlook for next season, their projected starting backcourt right now is looking like Kevin Porter Jr. at the point guard and Torian Prince. I mean, that's just not something you want to hear from a team that has one of the top 3 players in the league in their prime. Um, if we want to look at the rest of the roster, moving down, you have Kyle Kuzma at the 3, a guy who just had an abysmal start to his Bucks career last season, and really not a lot of energy off the bench either. They re-signed Bobby Portis, a guy who he's all right, you know. I mean, him, Gary Trent, Cole Anthony, these guys can have their nights, but these aren't guys that are gonna really move the needle and help Giannis capture championship number 2. My big question around the Milwaukee Bucks this year is mainly to Giannis. Giannis, do you have a 2018 LeBron year in you? Do you have a year in you where you can just absolutely take over on both ends of the court and lead a roster that leaves a lot to be desired through an Eastern Conference that is seemingly wide open? I do think he does have that in him, but I'm not sure if this Bucks team is going to be able to do that, especially with a guy like Doc Rivers at the helm.
Yeah, I do have the Bucks a little bit higher than that. I actually had them at my 7 seed, and it's for exactly that reason. I just think that a guy like Giannis can elevate this team so much. I mean, he's a top 3 player in the world right now, in my opinion. I don't think that that's really that much of a debate. And he's like a guy who, I mean, we saw in the playoffs last year, even though, I mean, this team didn't obviously have a good outcome at all, and they lose to the Pacers in, I think it was 5. But I mean, Giannis in that series puts up like 30, 33, like over 15 boards, over 6 assists, at like 60% field goal percentage. I believe in him, and just the looks and the pressure that he puts on a defense, and that ultimately creating for what is, you're right, it's definitely a pretty porous supporting cast. But I think that all of these players just get that little boost from playing with Giannis because he stresses the defense out so much. And I mean, you do have some guys who I think fit really well with that. I really do like this front court of Miles Turner and Giannis. I think that's like a pretty perfect fit. You're essentially kind of getting what you had in Brooke Lopez on those successful teams from earlier, obviously minus a little bit of that rim protection that Brooke had, where he was almost defensive player of the year. But I mean, you have Turner who's able to space it out around him. I mean, you really have to hope that Kuzma can get his shot back that is so elusive. I mean, we've seen him be a winning player in the past. You just got to hope that he can figure out his role a little bit better and just play more of that kind of role player mentality that he did, you know, when he did end up actually winning a ring with the Lakers, which sounds just wrong to say that Kuzma won a ring. But you have Gary Trent as another guy who can really coexist off of Giannis, and a guy who we saw in the playoffs last year had a lot of not a lot. I think he had 2 pretty great games, but definitely flashed some poise and is kind of that 3-point shooting guard that they need. They also have a guy who uh, I love watching his shot. AJ Green, he has a very, very pure 3-point shot. He's not going to give you too much other than that, but can play off of him. You're right about the point guard position. I am super worried about KPJ and Cole Anthony locking that down, but What I'm a little excited for is I think they're completely going in on this point Giannis idea, which is, I think, like pretty scary. And I think that Giannis is the type of guy who, we saw with Dame is maybe not the most willing to do those big man, like pick and roll, go to the rim type of things. But like him in this pure point forward role, I think like he can seriously elevate the people around him. And I'm expecting like a serious dominant season from Giannis. I don't think they'll be good enough to be for him to be in like MVP conversations, but I think his numbers are like certainly going to be up there. And I mean, Giannis is just, like he's kind of a sweat. Like he's going to take this regular season very seriously. And I think that that is just going to trickle down to the role players. I think this team will play hard because, I mean, they're win now. They have no choice but to be win now. They're going to have 20 million going against them for the next 5 years. They're in Giannis's prime. So, I mean, I just think this is going to be a team that, remains pretty competitive just because of a guy like Giannis, who, when we're looking at the teams, like near them, there is just not nearly a guy who's going to put any type of stress on a defense that close to Giannis. And hoping that this weird kind of ragtag group can find some guys who can take advantage of that
Yeah,
that
just a
freed up space.
couple closing thoughts I just had on these couple of teams. First, yeah, this upcoming season for Giannis, it's kind of I loved what you said first about him being kind of their primary point forward type of guy, because when you look at this roster, he is miles and miles ahead the best playmaker on this roster.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely like that idea from them. To me, this upcoming season for them kind of screams like 2005-06 Kobe, where this is a guy who he averaged like north of 35 points a game, and he was just stellar all season, had an 80-point game in there. But this is a team, and then the Lakers that year, they probably finished as like the 7th or 8th seed, and any hopes of winning an MVP in a season like that are out the window just from the record. So we can definitely see that statistical excellence from Giannis this year just may not be supported in the win column. But if we do want to move on to our next team here, at my 7th spot, I did have the Miami Heat. And this is a team where I think if you look at the Raptors and look at the Bucks, they have the Raptors are more that kind of solid 1 through 5 starting lineup, and then the Bucks are kind of top heavy, top 3 player in the world, hoping to carry them. The Miami Heat, I think, are just a lot more balanced than the two of these teams. And I think it all starts first with them having one of the best coaches in the league, Eric Spoelstra, a guy who I always trust to kind of rally the troops and have everyone ready to go when the season tips. I think Tyler Hero, coming off a career season, is going to build on that. He was 24 a game last year, stellar offensive player, and a guy who I think can continue to kind of be the first option there scoring-wise and hold it down effectively. They did bring in a Norman Powell, who was over on the Clippers, also coming off a career season. A guy who can step in, and I don't know if he'll quite be north of 20 a game like he was last season, but I don't really think they need him to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So Norman Powell, definitely another solid scorer and contributor for them. They still have Andrew Wiggins on the team as well. Pretty solid starting small forward, a guy who probably will never reach the heights that he did with Golden State again, but definitely still a starting caliber player, and a guy he's had a pretty solid career ever since being a quote-unquote underwhelming first overall pick. Moving down, they do still, of course, have Bam Adebayo, a guy who's probably overall still their best player when you factor in both ends of the court. I might lean to Hero now after the season he's coming off, but I mean, Bam was still 18-10 All-NBA defense, and Bam has had this Miami Heat team as a top 10 defense pretty much ever since he's been a starter here. So I'm definitely high on what he does for them, and kind of just establishes that defensive culture that Spoelstra loves so much. And then they do have the intriguing Kel'el Ware, who I'm projecting is going to start at their 5 this year, a guy who showed a lot of flash and promise last season, an uber athletic 5, and I just feel like this starting five definitely complements each other well. They can play defense, space the floor, and there is a lot of upside here. Even diving into some guys that might be coming off the bench, like someone I love, a Davion Mitchell. This guy screams Heat culture to me, and I think that it's just a perfect fit for him there. He's kind of that bulldog defender who's going to pick you up 94 feet and just never give you a break. And he's even shown strides on the offensive end of the court, so I'm positive and optimistic about his outlook this year. And I would definitely like to mention as well Kasparis Yakusionis, the guy who they stole with the 20th pick this year. That was still very surprised he fell that far. But anyone who gets drafted here, I feel like they have a pretty safe outlook to project at least into a rotational type of player. In Yakusionis, I think the ceiling's even higher. And then the last guy I just want to mention quickly, Nikola Jovic. Definitely some upside there for him as he continues his development.
Yeah, I think this could be a big year for Jovic. I mean, he's definitely going to have more of an opportunity than he ever has, and I've always liked him as a guy who can kind of fill in and do all the right things. He shoots it very well, athletic guy. But yeah, in terms of like the starting lineup, it does really complement each other well. I feel like this team is like the perfect situation for like a star to come into, and then they would be a really scary team. But the starting lineup, although it is like well created and like pretty balanced and talented, it is just kind of missing that guy who's going to put like consistent pressure on the rim, the guy who's going to be able to create his own shot and be a number one. Tyler Hero like filled into that role super admirably last year. I love Hero, but he's not necessarily a guy who is the most athletic. He's not going to be able to put a ton of pressure on the rim and get downhill. His playmaking got a little bit better, but still, I think ideally you'd like a guy who can kind of run the offense a little better. He's ultimately not a number one, even though he probably will be forced into that role this year. But bringing in Norman Powell, I think you do get a little bit of that rim pressure, but also just a guy who can fill in well, shoot the ball well, continue that spacing. Wiggins, you talked about, super good defender, and I mean their 3 through 5 is like very elite defensively. You mentioned Bam; he's one of the most impactful defenders in the league, and I think one of the biggest questions for this team, and if they'll be able to kind of push for the playoffs and secure higher seed. What you had them as the 7 seed? I think I had them as my 8. So if they'll be able to cut kind of the top of that play and maybe even avoid it with like a 6 seed or something, is Bam Adebayo's offense. I mean, in the first half of last year, we saw Bam just horrible from that side of the floor. I mean, he lost all his touch, which wasn't necessarily that good to start, but he always had a little bit of touch, like a little bit on those kind of inside the paint shots. Hopefully he can get that back, and hopefully he can kind of improve as a passer as he kind of was on that trajectory. He's can fill in well because this team does need some playmaking wherever they can get it. So I do hope that he can be kind of more of that hub for the offense. And I love Kalel Ware. He's super athletic. I think he goes great with Bam in the front court, especially considering Bam, although like he's a great versatile defender who can kind of lock down anyone. He's not doesn't necessarily have that size to be like an elite rim protector, which Kalel Ware can be. And he's working on a little bit of like a 3-point shot. Like he'll maybe hit one every like other game or so. So hopefully that gets better as he develops. He's a good young piece for them. And yeah, Davion Mitchell off the bench, just uh exactly what you said, like one of these Heat culture guys. And obviously Jaime Jaquez is like kind of the definition of that, is kind of one of those late first round picks who just seems to pan out. And they'll hopefully aim for that with Yakashonis, who I'm pretty excited about. I think this is a good landing spot for him. I hope he gets an opportunity here because they do need that playmaking, and I thought was one of the best passers in the draft, and also a pretty good shooter. Was a little bit streaky, but I think that he'll develop into a good player, and I like him on this team. But I think I like a lot of these players. I think they're versatile. I think they'll be able to throw a lot of lineups out. They have some versatility, and I think that when you pair that with Spoelstra, who has just been a coach who's been able to get everything out of his players the past, I mean, really ever since he's been coaching. They've been competitive after the LeBron era pretty much every year, and he just is gonna. I mean, he's gonna run a good offense. He's gonna get these guys going on defense, and like I do give that benefit of doubt to the Heat a little bit. They have such a strong culture, and they've been competitive for so long, and they are refusing to tank and not be competitive and throw in the towel. And you have to respect it a little bit. And I just think that this team will be good enough to definitely push for the playoffs in this week East. I don't know how high they'll be, but I definitely see them as a playoff team. And I mean, they do have a lot of guys who are kind of in trade talks. So I think it'll be interesting to see if I don't think they'll be sellers based on like the way they've just kind of identified themselves throughout this whole thing. It'd be interesting to see how they can move these guys around and maybe acquire a star eventually. I know they're always in like trade talks whenever there's like a superstar available, and they have these tradable contracts and like a Powell who's on an expiring contract. I know Wiggins is on a contract, so you can combine some of these salaries and maybe get someone in here, but we're not talking about that now. We're not talking about what ifs and stuff right now. I think they're kind of bottom of the playoff seeding type of team, and I have them at 8, you have them at 7, right?
Yes, sir.
So who would be your 6? Did we cover everyone through?
Yeah, we I think our only discrepancies there was just a little mix around between Milwaukee, Toronto, and Miami. But it seems that we do agree those teams are kind of in their own tier. If I am moving on,
Yeah.
my 6th seed, I personally had the Philadelphia 76ers, a team who may have the widest range of outcomes in the entire conference for this upcoming season. And that is mainly pertaining to this kind of Golden State reminiscent 2 timelines that they have going on right now. If we want to start from the top of their roster, budding star Tyrese Maxey will be the starting point guard. Yeah, this kid's a stud. He's an all-star level player, one of the quickest players in the league, and turning into one of the best scorers in the league. I like Tyrese Maxey a lot. I think the next step for him may be becoming a little bit more adept on the playmaking side and kind of making the guys around him better. But yeah, I'm sky high on Tyrese Maxey, and the guy who they drafted with the 3rd overall pick, and they'll be plugging in next to Maxey, I presume, in the starting backcourt, VJ Edgecombe, a prospect that I loved. And why I like the fit with him in Philly is he was definitely one of the most NBA ready guys coming out of the draft. And this is a team that obviously wants to win now. You have a decaying front court, so time is definitely ticking. And VJ Edgecombe is hopefully a guy that they can plug in and probably expect to get at least maybe 15 points a game out of this year with some solid defense. Moving down, you have Kelly Oubre as the projected starting small forward. I like Oubre a lot. Shoots the ball well, plays some good defense. He'll have some sporadic, goofy moments from time to time, but he's still a solid NBA player and a guy I'd feel comfortable in this roster as my starting 3. If we move down to the power forward position, maybe the player who had the most disappointing season last year, that would be Mr. Paul George. We will see this year if Paul George has any resistance to the washed allegations and if he can kind of turn around his career outlook from trending way downward as it did last year. He has taken up a profession of what we're doing right now, and you would kind of like to see him focus more of his attention back on the NBA court, where we've seen some very high highs from him. And I mean, if we get the Paul George of old on this team, like I said, the range of outcomes for this team, if it's the Paul George of old, they can be the 2 seed. They can be right up there
Same.
with the best teams in the East. And then the guy who it should all revolve around if he can stay on the court, Mr. Joel Embiid. I mean, a guy who just also had such an incredibly disappointing season last year, could not stay on the court for the life of him. And at this point, we really don't know if those knees are ever going to be the same. Kind of looking like ever since he threw that lob off the glass to himself against my Knicks in the playoffs 2 years ago, we have never really seen him be the same since then. And I don't know if we ever will again. If we do, like I said, this team can be right up there with the 1 or 2 seed, but I just have a lot of question marks about mainly those two guys, Paul George and Joel Embiid, two guys that have a very strong chance at making the Hall of Fame once they retire, but right now it looks like they're definitely trending downwards. One other guy I did just want to quickly mention off the bench, a rare bright spot for them last season that was also eventually cut short due to injury. Jared McCain, a guy who looked like he might have been able to run away with Rookie of the Year if he stayed healthy. But I love his outlook as the sixth man for this team, a guy who can kind of just come in and be that spark plug offensively, shoot the skin off of the ball. And he's not going to be an elite playmaker or defender, but yeah, I like that role for him comfortably as well. How do you feel about this Sixers team this year?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely the team with like the wildest range of outcomes. I have them at the 6th seed too, and I feel like we kind of did the same thing here. You don't really know what to do with them. Like they could be, like you said, a team that's pushing in those top two like seeds. I mean, if like Embiid's healthy, like this is a team that could be the best team in the East. Like, I mean, a healthy Embiid, I mean, is one of the best players in the world, and like at the same time, like with him and George, like in that just the overall health questions, like this is also a team that you could see at the bottom if things don't pan out. Which is really sad to say. I mean, I as a Celtics fan was never an Embiid fan, but I mean, you can't deny that like the talent is just one of the best we've ever seen. So I mean, that's what this team like really like revolves all around. I mean, if Embiid's healthy and looks like his old self, obviously that's going to do wonders for this team. You mentioned Paul George maybe getting back, which I mean that would be something if he could turn back the clocks. Then this team would get really scary. But I mean, I think even if he just just improves a little bit last year and like from last year and cleans it up a little bit, even just kind of as he gets older kind of fades more into like kind of this off ball like shooter guy. I mean, he's always been such a great shooter. I mean, obviously one of the best players of the last generation, and last year, I mean, I think all around the board probably every single stat for the guy went down a little bit. So I mean, I think it's pretty optimistic to hope that he can get back to like those Clippers, Thunder, Pacers days. But I think he's a guy who has been around the league for a while, has always been a pretty solid playmaker, a guy you can lean on. I think if he can just kind of adapt his game into this later stage of his career and be a better off ball player, he's a good passer, he can be a good connective guy. I think if he can maybe put a little more effort in on the defensive end again this year, maybe cut down on the podcasting a little bit, I think he could still be a valuable piece. And yeah, I mean, Maxey is pretty clear cut the second best player on this team when Embiid's healthy, and I think he complements Embiid super well. Is able to just kind of move around off of Embiid, circulate around him. He's a great guy who can do a little floater. He's a great shooter from outside, fun guy to watch, always smiling. Yeah, gotta love Maxey, and I think he can take another step. For sure. And I think they'll probably need him to. They'll probably lean on him a little bit because, I mean, the best way to go about this would be to not have Embiid play every game. You're going to want to rest him a fair amount, especially if you are trying to make this playoff push. He's going to need to not play close to 80 games. I mean, I don't even know if he'll be able to play 60 games. I would definitely measure with him, and it's going to take some Maxi stepping up, working more as a playmaker, like you said, and just being more of that lead guy. He can do pretty much everything else well. We know he can score the ball from wherever. And if they can get Quentin Grimes, the same Quentin Grimes that they got last year, I know he is. Is he still a restricted free agent right now? Assuming they work that contract out, if they can get Grimes to provide some spark, and he's just such a valuable build. I mean, nobody knew that he had the scoring that he pulled off last year, but I mean, before that, he was just a 3-and-D wing who was valuable like asset, borderline starting caliber role player. I mean, and when he all of a sudden was able to create his own shot, you can see the value in that. So, I mean, he's another. All these guys are just kind of like X factors. Like you really don't know what you're getting with the Sixers. Like it could be great. You look at that lineup, and you could have four guys who can score, well over 20 a game, which would be crazy. I mean, I remember the old Sixers teams that used to have that. And then, like you said, bringing in a guy like Edgecombe who has been, esteemed as a winning player, a guy who hustles, guy who plays good defense, obviously very athletic, and he had some great summer league games. So I'm super excited to see what he can do. I think he's the type of guy that they need here. And looking towards the future a little bit with him, but definitely a great building block for them. Definitely great that they were able to get that draft pick this year in this talented draft. And yeah, I think McCain is like the perfect six man, really, like gonna give you that scoring plug off the bench. And he can do that. He can do that really well. Great shooter. I mean, this team, like hypothetically, can just shoot the lights out. I want to see this team healthy. The Celtics are don't have any skin in the game anymore. I can now appreciate the potential of this team, and I hope Embiid can get back to what he was, but it doesn't seem likely. I know there's some kind of nerve-wracking reports around him that he's not even back to full speed now. Um, degenerative knee issues, which is sad because he truly is one of the most talented big men I've ever seen. I mean, the guy's like he could handle. I mean, he can score from anywhere. Like just such a beast, such a physical specimen. Makes sense that his body can't handle. I mean, being so elite for too long. But yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's just about everyone. I don't really want to talk about Kyle Lowry at this stage in his career, so we can skip over him. They do have Kelly Oubre, who's another guy that can provide some length, some defense, can shoot it
Yeah.
well occasionally. So I mean, I like this room of bodies. They don't have like the most insane depth, but they have a lot of talent. They're long. They can shoot. It's just health with this team, and that's why
Yeah.
they end up in the middle.
Health is definitely the biggest thing for Finley. And yeah, you hit it on the nail with Embiid. I mean, this is definitely one of the most talented centers I've ever seen. Some of the most elite footwork I've ever seen at the center position. Just a matchup nightmare, and a guy that if he's healthy, you really have no choice but to throw two bodies at him as soon
Mm-hmm.
as he catches the ball. So,
The guy
yeah.
had a
Also,
handle too, dude.
yeah,
He
he can handle
really
the ball.
could.
I mean,
Just
Joel
so
Embiid's
skilled.
MVP season as well. One of the best mid-range shots I've ever seen on a big man, like without a doubt. Too that was such a dangerous weapon for him. Of course, at the free throw line as well, if you want to consider that mid-range. But
Such a
yeah,
stud.
he can also defend, of course, with some of the best of them. I
Mm-hmm.
believe he has a couple all NBA or all defensive teams to his name as well.
Couple
Um,
all NBAs too, for sure.
Definitely. And yeah, I mean, a guy who 2 years ago was being compared and argued right against Nikola Jokic. So, I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, that,
it
that
was
just
a
gives you
valid
an
debate for a
idea
while.
of Embiid. But if we do want to move on to our next team here, a team that I just feel, I mean, could the Sixers be better than this team? Definitely. But I just feel a little bit safer about their outlook this year. And that is the Detroit Pistons team
Okay.
again that gave us such a good fight in the first round. GG's again to Pistons fans. That was a fun series. But yeah, I mean, this team is again running it back with a lot of the same core. JB Bickerstaff at the helm. Hats off to him. He had an incredible first season there. But of course, again, this team will live and die by Cade Cunningham. Cade Cunningham is a guy that I wouldn't be surprised at the end of the season if he's a top 10 player. I mean, he was the first overall pick a couple years ago and has absolutely lived up to it. This is a guy who last year was 26 points and 9 assists on solid efficiency and also very solid defense on the other end as well. You can feel good about this guy running your offense for all 82 games. I mean, he can really do a little bit of everything. Great pick and roll ball handler, awesome pace with Cunningham, awesome in between game with Cunningham. Maybe a little bit more consistency behind the arc would be the next step for him. But I mean, just a really solid, tall point guard that really does a little bit of everything and keeps his team together and is the reason that I'm projecting them so high. Moving down a little bit, Jaden Ivey, a guy who had his season cut short last year, didn't get to see him at all in the playoffs, but definitely a fun, athletic shooting guard who I think played well off of Cade when they did play together. I'm curious to see how that dynamic continues to grow and if they can kind of continue to mesh together and grow more consistent chemistry. But yeah, Jaden Ivey's, like I said, a freak athlete. Again, for him, I think the next step is the jumper. If he can figure that out, he'll be very dangerous. Moving down, Asar Thompson, likely their starting small forward. A guy, of course, one of two freakishly athletic twins that we have in this league. Does he have the ceiling of a man? I don't think so, but I think he can be damn close at his ceiling. They have very similar skill sets, which I find pretty cool. Of course, neither of these guys are going to wow you with their outside shooting, but an elite defender, an uber athlete, probably one of the 5 best athletes in the league, and just a great connecting piece, and someone who did give Brunson a good amount of fits throughout the series. Not on the last shot, though, definitely not. But if we do want to move on a little bit, they do also have Tobias Harris, kind of a boring player, but a good power forward, a good veteran presence for this team, and someone who you can kind of plug in and just trust that they're going to get you around 15 points, 6 rebounds a game, be able to hit their catch and shoot shots, and just be another solid starter for them. And then at the starting 5, they have Jalen Duren, of course, a guy who has continued to grow his chemistry with Cade Cunningham, and we see it every year. A very athletic center whose offensive game is pretty limited, but he's a great rebounder, and he kind of brings that bad boy Detroit energy from times. Him and Isaiah Stewart definitely wear their heart in their sleeve and show that Detroit energy that made this team so popular in the early and mid 2000s. And then they did also bring in Karis LeVert, who I'm not the highest on personally, but he can come off the bench for 15 minutes a game and give you some solid offense and give Cade Cunningham a little bit of a rest. They do have year 2 coming up for Ron Holland, a guy who he's another athlete who can't shoot the ball too well. But if any of these guys, Jaden Ivey, Asar Thompson, Ron Holland, ever figure out the jumper, that would be a huge factor for this team as well and could definitely propel them up these rankings. But for now, I think 5 is a fair evaluation for Detroit heading into 25-26.
Yeah, I have them at 5 too. I think that's pretty close to where they were last year. It's either 5. I think they were either 5 or 6 last
They were
year.
the 6 because we matched up 6-3.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I think they largely, and we talked about them in our offseason videos, a team that, didn't necessarily do that much, but could just get better based on like their young players growing. I mean, they lose Dennis Schroeder, like we talked about, but they gain Levert, who can hopefully kind of supplement some of that like scoring off the dribble ability. Even though neither of us are too high on him, hopefully you can get most of what you had there with Schroeder. You lose Beasley to nefarious circumstances, but you bring in Duncan Robinson, who can hopefully supplement that shooting, and you lose Tim Hardaway Jr. and you gain Jaden Ivey, who I think is kind of their chance for them to take the next step this year. I think they need like an Ivy level breakout because, I mean, we saw this. Cade did a great job of leading this team, and he has proven, I think, that he can be number 1, but they really do need like a second option level guy. I mean, you mentioned like Tobias is like a boring player. Like that was their second option like last year. Like I think they seriously need either Ivy to like break out, or like maybe I'd like to see them like entertain a trade or something, because I think just bringing in like a second guy who's capable of scoring to take, so much of the load off of Cade would help out. Even like I think like a Lauri Markkanen would do a team like this wonders. Especially to help out with some of the spacing that you mentioned that they need help. But yeah, I mean, it all starts with Cade with this team, and obviously a guy who, I mean, he's as he gets older, you're hoping that he can. I mean, he's a great playmaker right now, great handle, and I love the pace that Cade plays at. He really plays at like his own pace. He never feels too panicked and all, but I'm sure as he gets older, he'll clean up the turnovers a little bit. I know he did have some problems with that. And I think another thing that I'd like to see Cade this year is maybe get to the rim a little more. I know he relies on kind of that mid-range shot, a little bit of a reliance on that difficult shot making. That getting to the line I think will help, or getting to the rim will help him get to the line too, and just kind of get some easier looks, because they do ask so much of him on this offense, and he is just such a gifted scorer and ball handler and lead guy. I think you have your built-in lead guy, and no, like you said, nobody can, or nobody would be surprised if he's in top 10 conversations. I've already seen him in top 10 conversations already. But yeah, I mean, this team is a young team. They have kind of that strong defensive identity with guys like Duran, the very very athletic, like very dynamic center. Osar doesn't really get talked about as much as Amen, and obviously he's not necessarily the same dynamic level player on the offensive end in terms of like handling the ball and getting downhill. But I mean, defensively, he's a stud. Like very like not the same level athlete, but I think almost on that level. And I mean, he's definitely got the arrow going up on him. I think this team can definitely get better, because they are very young. But I do want to see them make a move. Maybe they won't have to. Maybe Jaden Ivey can take that step this year coming off of injury. He obviously was a huge loss last year, but I do think that this team has at least established for now that they're able to stay in kind of this mid to upper tier in the East. And yeah, I mean, for Pistons fans, you got to be pleased at how this turnaround has happened. I mean, they were obviously in the basement for so long, and you have your star in Cade, and I think it just comes to kind of building out a better offensive ecosystem around him now.
I definitely agree. Someone I wonder if they ever inquired about would be someone like a Bradley Beal, who was signed for 2 years, 11 million. Like,
right,
I feel like the Pacers probably had that on their, excuse me, the Pistons probably had that on their cap sheet. I don't exactly know their contractual situation, but off the top of my head, it doesn't seem like they have too many financial burdens on the roster. But yeah, I mean, just another guy that can come in and provide some offensive relief would be huge for this team. I definitely agree. Um,
yeah. I mean,
if we do,
Beal's probably not the guy who's looking to go to Detroit and join a team that's on the up and coming, but I agree. That's the exact kind of mold they need. Just so, I mean, when you focus the defensive attention on Cade, you have another option outside of him, even though he does run such a good offense, and I think that's only going to get better.
definitely. Um, if we do want to keep moving forward on this list here, the next two teams that I have here, we did touch on for a good amount in our initial episode.
Mhm.
If you guys haven't seen that yet, definitely go check it out. We covered and touched on a lot of the offseason activity that's gone on so far around the NBA, and just gave our inputs on our biggest winners and losers. And just a little spoiler, both these next teams we had as big winners. Starting at number 4 for me, I do have the Orlando Magic, um, a team that last year was elite defensively and atrocious offensively and could not shoot the ball. That was their main downfall. They solved that in a big way by acquiring Desmond Bane, which of course we did touch on previously, but this is a guy that is for his career an absolute knockdown shooter and can do it in any way you want. Do I think this single acquisition solves that bigger picture problem that they had? I don't. I think that they're still going to be overall probably a pretty measly shooting team, But is it a step in the right direction? Absolutely. And I do love the the acquisition for them, when really the only big piece they did give up is that 2026 Phoenix pick, which could definitely provide fruitful for Memphis. But yeah, I mean, Desmond Bain was their big acquisition, and then they just stacked that on top of their promising young core of Jalen Suggs, Franz Wagner, and Paolo Banchero, a group of guys that, if we want to start with Paolo, of course, he's projected to be their best player going forward, reigning first overall pick from a couple years back. And yeah, he's lived up to that hype so far. Last year gave you about 26, 8, and 5. I know he missed a large chunk of last season, but proved effective when he was there despite some efficiency issues throughout the season. But you do see that a lot with one, younger players, and two, guys that spend a lot of time on the sidelines and never really got into the rhythm that we know they're capable of. I just think that this starting lineup with, of course, Wendell Carter then rounding out the 5 is a very solid team. And behind Jamal Mosley, yeah, they should definitely be a top 5 seed in the East to me.
Yeah, and I mentioned that we need to see kind of these playmaking jumps from their two star forwards, Franz and Paulo, in the offseason video. I might have been a little bit harsh on Paulo. I mean, he definitely has shown flashes to be a great passer, and did average around 5 assists last year. And Franz has that natural feel for the game too. I think with Paulo, it is just that decision making a little bit. I think he is a guy who, can be like a top 10 player in this league. Like, I think if he really wants to get that efficiency number uh, back up, I mean, I think he needs to attack more and take a little less of like the difficult, like mid range, inefficient type of shots. And obviously, Bain does bring exactly what this team needed in shooting and just off ball play. And I actually I feel like if you asked me this during our off-season video, I would have maybe preferred the Hawks, but I actually did put the Magic over the Hawks in this. I really keep going back and forth on this. I mean, when I was reviewing them for this video, just the thought that kind of crept into my head a little bit is I was seeing a little bit of like my 2024 Celtics like creeping into this team. I do see it a little bit with, the two dynamic forwards who are going to carry the ball a lot of the time, can score in like a lot of different ways. I mean, I don't know if Paolo is necessarily close to that like Tatum level yet. And I don't know if Franz is quite the athlete that Brown is, but might have a little bit better of a feel. And then, I mean, you bring in like a guy like Suggs or you get back a guy like Suggs who, I mean, he wasn't necessarily as good of a shooter last year when he had to take on more of like the playmaking duties as kind of this team's lead ball handler, but I do think he can kind of get back to getting his 3-point shot up a little more and take kind of that similar to like a Drew Holiday role, like more of a corner 3 type of guy. He has had that sporadically throughout his career, so I think that maybe a little less offensive pressure will help him get that back a little bit. And obviously, Bain is kind of like their Derek White here, who again doesn't necessarily have like that same feel, but is gonna be an elite off-ball shooter. And I mean, isn't necessarily the same defender. I mean, it's not a perfect comparison, but I do see kind of the seeds here. You're just gonna need steps from the forwards. The thing would be that the center room, they obviously don't have a guy like KP, but I mean, the Celtics really rarely had KP too. But yeah, I do think that is kind of the weakness now. I would like to see them upgrade their center room. I don't think Wendell Carter is necessarily the best starting center you can have. Hopefully, I know he's been kind of rough the past few years too, especially. He definitely lost his range a little bit, which would be helpful to get back if Franz and Paolo aren't shooting the ball as well this year. But yeah, they definitely could get some help there, maybe a little more defense there. But I trust Jamal Mosley to get this lineup locked in defensively. They also can rotate Isaac there, who is one of the more versatile pieces in the league. And then in terms of depth, I mean, it's not great with this team, but it's relying and tapping into their draft picks from a lot of the past few years. You're going to see some Anthony Black out there. You're going to see some Jace Richardson, who was their rookie this year, to get that bench scoring punch. Tristan Da Silva, you can say the same thing for. It'd be great if they could get a little something out of Jet Howard, who they took early a while ago. Yeah, I mean, they also have Tyus Jones off the bench, who can hopefully supplement some of that playmaking as well and just kind of circulate around to some of these guys. But yeah, I do feel good about the Magic. I think the difference between them and the Hawks for me is just I know that they have this identity established as a defensive team, which I do believe that the Hawks can get there, but they don't necessarily. This team won't necessarily have like that weak point defender in Trae Young, which the Hawks will have, which similar to the Celtics was like such an asset for them. There's not anyone you can really attack on defense, and that goes a long way. If we just want to get into the Hawks right now, if you don't have anything to say on them.
Yeah.
I think really the big thing that made me change my mind on this team, and not change my mind, I still love these guys and what they're doing, and I definitely would consider them to be at least as good as the Magic, if not better, if you could assure me that Kristaps Porzingis was going to play the whole year. But the more I thought about it and the more I wanted to have them at that top 3 seed, the more I realized that it is kind of all resting on that for them to reach the ceiling as one of the top teams in the East. And I just don't know if like I can bet on that. I mean, I do love the pieces outside of them, like we talked in the last episode. I mean, Dyson Daniels, great defender. Hopefully he can hold his own on the offensive end and does. And also, a little bit of a decent like secondary passer. I mean, Jalen Johnson plugs in great with Trae, gives you a lot of length. Combined with Reese Shea, who's another long guy who you're going to have on the wing and able to space it out. I like where this team's going. It does really just come down to Porzingis for me, and it was hard to completely trust him. And I mean, when you don't have Porzingis in there, it gets a little bit questionable. I like Onyeka Okongwu, but I don't know if he necessarily has the size to be like your full-time center, and I know that's probably why they were a little hesitant over the years, because he has shown good stuff when he's on the court. Just it's tough, being 6'8" as your team's big man. And I mean, I'll kick it off to you because I know you love this team and you love Trae Young, but I do believe in them. I mean, I think having them at 4 speaks to that. And I wish I could put them higher, because I do just love the fit, and I can really see it happening. I can see this team like playing out perfectly in this just Trae Young heliocentric offense. You have the perfect pieces around him. And I mean, it all fits. It's just like I said, going to come down to KP.
Yeah. Very fair speculation to have, especially we have both been kind of, I'll just phrase it this way. Porzingis has been on both of our teams, and we have seen those attendance issues firsthand, the both of us. So I definitely do get where you're coming from. Not mad at all at flopping these two teams. I think it can kind of go either way. It's like the two Eastern Conference teams that were like play-in level last year, but you can tell they're both ready to kind of take that next step. Not mad at whichever order you have them in. I did, however, have the Hawks at my 3 seed. And I'll just dive into it in a little bit. We did definitely talk about them in length in our first video as well. But, I mean, for me, even if Porzingis does miss, I don't know, let's say you get 40 games out of Porzingis, and that's only half the season. I don't mind at all the center stack of Onyeka Okongwu and Asa Newell. I think these are two guys that definitely complement Trae Young very well, and definitely defensively, both of them are strong, and offensively, Porzingis can do a lot more versatility-wise than these guys, but I don't think it's something that will hamper them too much throughout the regular season if they do see a lot of heavy attendance issues from Porzingis. Their front court as a whole has definitely shown some attendance issues if you factor in Jalen Johnson as well. If both of these guys miss significant time, then yeah, I don't think the Hawks will end up as the 3 seed. That's a lot of volume to try to replace. But I mean, Trae Young, definitely one of the best floor raisers in the entire league and one of the best playmakers in the league and one of the best that I've ever witnessed with my own two eyes. I'm very high on what he can do. And like you said, and we kind of built on in our initial episode, if you're going to build a team around a guy like Trae Young, this is how you do it. So Dyson Daniels, of course, the reigning most improved player and an all NBA first defensive team member, the perfect type of guy to put next to a liability on that end in Trae Young. Sophomore season from Zachary Risache, a guy who I wouldn't be surprised if he averages 17, 18 points this year. That's it within the realm of possibility. Improving his off the dribble game as the season goes on and maintaining that two-way capability that he showed so many flashes of during his rookie season. And then you bring in Nickeil Alexander-Walker, just such an awesome addition, a guy who is a two-way player, really, by definition. And if we ever do see them roll out the backcourt of Dyson Daniels and Nickeil, that is just going to be a absolute nightmare for whatever opposing team has to face them. They also did add Luke Kennard in, of course, this offseason, one of the best shooters in the league, and statistically one of the best of all time. I just like everything they did this offseason, and to me, their ceiling, I am a ceiling guy, their ceiling is probably the best offense in the NBA. So that's something I take into account when I make these rankings, and that definitely outweighed, of course, you have the elite defensive projection for the Orlando Magic, but I don't think they'll be able to touch Atlanta on the offensive end.
Yeah. I think if you could guarantee KP's health for me, I would probably take them over the Magic. Just yeah, even if he does play 40 games, I'm not sure what's going to happen come playoff time. I mean, in my 2 years with him, he was never able to do that, even though he gave us great minutes and a couple games in the finals, wasn't able to completely do it. And I think this is a team with probably a little or a lot less margin for error than that Celtics team. But yeah, I love the build, and I am very high on this team and would love to see it happen. I think, Quinn Snyder is gonna be able to drum up a beautiful offense around these guys. And
definitely,
I mean, defensively, they have all the pieces around Trae that you could ask for. But you want to get into the top two? Who do you have at two?
I would love to get into the top two, and I had to restrict some of my bias here. It seems like we do have the same top two.
Right. I thought you might have tried pulling a fast one.
Did I want to throw them at one? I definitely thought about it.
I could see it.
I love the team at 1 too, so I'm really not too upset about it. Let me just show the viewers what I'm rocking here quick. We got my two boys in honor of the Knicks at the 2 seed. Let's go. I got my Knicks coming in at 2 here for the upcoming season. Nuke head coach Mike Brown, of course, was the headline for our offseason. And yeah, I mean, I'm just looking to build off, hopefully, what was, of course, a very successful season last year. We made a couple small acquisitions for our bench. But for me, the main thing is just, if Mike Brown comes in here, I'm looking for him to get these bench guys involved more consistently, more often. And just, if you can establish that from like the beginning of the year and make these guys feel important and give them these consistent rotational minutes, help them build up their confidence and their efficiency and everything like that, that will definitely bode well when we get more into playoff time. This is a stat that I did touch on briefly in our debut episode, but it's well documented. The Knicks were dead last in bench points last season, and that even fell to a measly 15 bench points a game in the playoffs, which is just inexcusable. And your ceiling is really never going to be too high if that is the kind of outlook that you're giving in the playoffs. So yeah, bringing in Jordan Clarkson. Do I expect 18 a game from Clarkson off the bench? I don't. But I mean, if we can get 14 or 15 from Clarkson on decent passable efficiency, I'd feel really good about that, especially next to a couple other guys that had some awesome moments for us in the playoffs, being Deuce McBride and Mitchell Robinson. Very happy to be running it back with both of these guys. I like Deuce a lot and what he does for the team. I've interestingly seen some speculation about maybe a starting lineup switch where the Knicks go Brunson, Deuce, McCall, OG, Cat, and then you bring Josh Hart off the bench for some extra versatility and energy. Personally, I don't hate it. And Deuce is also a lot better of a shooter than Josh Hart, so that could help with our starting lineup spacing. But yeah, whichever way they go with that, I'll be curious to see. But then the last guy I did just want to touch on briefly, Gershon Yabusele, the last guy we brought in. I said this last episode too, but I really just want this guy to be a better Precious Achiuwa for us and kind of be that connecting 4-5 on the bench. He had a great season for Philly, but it flew under the radar because of how poor they performed. So if he can be, 10, 11 a game off the bench for us on good efficiency and a solid rebounder and a solid defender, I will take that every single day of the week for what we signed him up for.
Yeah, good 3-and-D big off the bench for sure. I feel like it's my role to maybe be a little bit of the Debbie Downer here, but don't worry, I will certainly. There is a lot of things to be excited about, but yeah, I think the only real concerns about the Knicks this year is, I mean, it's so interesting with this team because it's the best part of their team and it's also the biggest concern. It's the JB and Cat dynamic on defense. And we saw last playoffs. There were moments in the Celtics series where like I thought everything I'd previously believed uh was wrong about these two because they both stepped up and I thought played, I mean, not elite, they're never going to be elite defenders, but I thought they were both respectable defenders in that Celtics series. Celtics, I mean, maybe it was a little bit more about, I mean, our guys getting in their head a little bit, questions about, our ability to play in the clutch and stuff. But I thought we weren't necessarily able to attack really Cat or Brunson on the mismatches that we love to do. But in the Pacers series, we definitely saw it come to light. We saw Jalen Brunson getting exhausted because he was just getting drawn out, picked on defense. And we saw Cat play honestly one of like the worst defensive series I've ever seen. I mean, he is just like unfortunately not that serious of a rim protector. And that's going to continue to be my question with this team. But I mean, we'll get to it later. I think that the Cavs have almost a similar issue that they also have two defensive liabilities in their starting lineup. But so that's my only drawback with this team when we talk about them being like a full-fledged like contender, like not just coming out of the East but winning the finals. But I do think it's possible. And I mean, let's just get into like some of the positives here. Like I think they're seriously like as good as the offense was last year and in the playoffs. Like I think there seriously like is some room to grow for this team on offense. And that's why Tibbs gets fired and you bring in Mike Brown. I like when I watched this team, I mean the offense was not, I mean, it's steaming with talent, two great scorers, but I don't know how like well put together it was. It felt like it was mostly like almost Brunson and Cat like taking turns. It was never them really playing off of each other as much as you'd like to see. And I think that that's something that Mike Brown's going to come in and he's going to start drawing up a lot better. I mean, I think he's going to get them involved in actions together. And I think that's going to also trickle down to the rest of the team too, where in the playoffs, it felt like I always felt like the Knicks weren't even like reaching, they were winning these crazy games, but I didn't even think they were reaching their full potential because it felt like either Bridges or OG was going off, but never like both at the same time. It felt like they were always almost staggered. So I think that Mike Brown's going to come in and like just fix a lot of these like weird like inefficiencies in the offense, and I think that he's going to get a lot of the best out of these players. So I think that they're going to reach their offensive potential and just kind of supercharge this offense, which I believe is why they made the move to get rid of Tibbs and why they made the move to bring in such an offensive coach. I'm super excited to see it. I'd love to see them get Brunson working a little more off the ball too. Like I do think he is capable of, and just open up this offense. I think it's just like the little things, like the little like off ball screens and details, and just get it humming into a unit. Some of the things that Tibbs wasn't able to do, that Brown brings. I mean, he led one of the best offenses in recent memory with a Kings team that wasn't nearly as talented as this on the offensive end and wasn't brimming with scorers and shooting. And I really do like it. It makes me excited to think about what this team can be on offense, especially when I do think you can get better play out of like Mikal Bridges, especially. I think he can be better than he was last year and get maybe a little closer to like how he was playing in Brooklyn. OG, I love I love OG just all around. I mean, he's probably like the fourth option on this offense, but that's like a damn good fourth option, like a guy who can actually get a little rim pressure too, like super athletic, like can be a very good shooter. I just I have those two concerns. Obviously on defense that probably everybody's going to have. But I mean, you can overlook those when you have a superpowered offense. And I mean, I guess this isn't really a concern, but I do hope that the defense doesn't falter without Tibbs. And I don't necessarily think that it will. I do think that like the Tibbs effect was very real and he instilled like such a strong culture in this team. And you definitely feel that when they play, like they kind of just have like, they do have just like a little bit of like the vibes. Like maybe it's a lazy answer, but like they have just energy and aura. And I think that that will hopefully definitely stay with them as they're keeping the core like largely the same together. So I mean, hopefully some of those details don't get diluted and the defense doesn't falter without Tibbs. But yeah, I mean the two guys they bring in, filling out the bench, I think that you have like a full rotation now, that you're going to be able to play, which is pretty great. I mean, obviously you're not going to be nearly like front loading the lineups to the level that you were before, with Tom as head coach, obviously. So I mean, when you have McBride, Clarkson, Yabusele, and Mitch off the bench, I mean that's super solid. You have a full lineup now. Yeah, I mean I'm really excited about this team. I do think that they can. I mean, obviously they come out of the East. I really think that it's close, and I'm almost a little surprised that you didn't take them over the Cavs because I really do. I think that from a talent standpoint, like it's really neck and neck. But
Yeah.
any closing words before we get into those top seeded Cavs for both of us?
Yeah, man. Yeah, so it was definitely tempting to put them there, but got to stay a little bit humble, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Going to feel out this team for a little bit this year and see how they're looking at the beginning of the year. I definitely agree with a lot of what you just said. Couple things for me that I'm looking for this year. One of my gripes with Tibbs, that we kind of saw come to fruition throughout the playoffs was I feel like the only player on our team that night in and night out had their offense and volume guaranteed was Jalen Brunson. Where, of course, Cat had a great playoffs, and I'm very grateful for what he did for us. But a lot of games, he really didn't get his touches in the natural flow of the offense. He kind of had to search for it and almost force his way from times.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to see some more post-ups for him and just some more actions for Cat, keeping him involved in the offense. I mean, this is a guy on a max contract because of his offensive capabilities. Let's really put that money to use and give this guy as much volume as he can handle, because at the end of the day, I believe this is a guy who's averaged north of 25 points in the past and has, I mean, just elite offensive upside. And I do agree as well with what you said about how it's kind of like it was kind of your turn, my turn with OG and McCall offensively last year. They both averaged around 18 for the season, which is awesome. But if they can do that on the same night, I mean, think about, of course, the ceiling that we may possess there. If we're looking at a consistent type of box score of Jalen Brunson and Cat, both north of 25 points, and those guys both hovering around the 15 to 20 point threshold more consistently, that would be huge for us. Last thing from Mike Brown that I would love to see him address and lock into this offseason. we touched on it a little bit before, of course, but those minutes where Brunson and Cat share the court, are there ways to effectively make sure that the defense does not fall off an absolute cliff when those guys are sharing the court? And I'm sure there are. Tibbs seem to not really have the answers there, and it's tough. The answers may not exist, but I'm curious to see what Mike Brown comes up with. Different schemes. Of course, we have awesome defensive talent around those two, so that's why I'm slightly optimistic there. But yeah, very excited for my boys next year, and will not be disappointed at all if I am wrong about them being the 2 seed instead of the 1.
Yep. So I'd be super excited if I were you. This is a team that I think is really neck and neck with the Cavs, who we'll get into now. And I think the reason why I think it's so close is just like I personally, I mean, I don't know if I can really fully excuse like the playoff loss from the Cavs. I know there were injuries, they missed a couple of games, but I mean, it's a little discouraging. Like they crumbled, to be completely honest. They had an opportunity to like get back into that series, but I mean they ended up losing in 5. I mean, and after the season that they had before that, I think that's like pretty brutal. You saw them choke away game 2 in just like brutal fashion. Like I mean, I know the Pacers obviously were a great team and they outplayed them that series, but it is just a little underwhelming for the Cavs to end the year. So I'll give my thoughts on them. But what are you expecting from the Cavs this year? What do you see?
Yeah, I'm definitely still very high on this Cavs team. I saw some of those maybe red flags, you might want to call them, in their playoff series last year versus Indiana. I do feel very sorry for Donovan Mitchell. He gave an exceptional effort throughout that whole series. But at the end of the day, I know it's kind of a lame excuse, but like even when DG and Mobley returned, it was very evident they weren't themselves. And that's kind of an easy cop out. Of course, the Pacers were only playing who's in front of them. But at the end of the day, if these guys are healthy in the playoffs and if Evan Mobley continues his absolutely unreal progression, I mean, the ceiling for this team is only going to expand. I know Jarrett Allen has had some lows in the playoffs and some suspect quotes around kind of his comfortability in the playoffs,
Right.
but still a center that I'm high on, an awesome two-way center, and a guy who's clearly very comfortable playing with the likes of a DG. Something that I love the Cavs. There's something I love that the Cavs do, or quite often under this new Kenny Atkinson offense, is they kind of stagger their stars, where they love playing DG and Jarrett Allen together, who are like such a good fit together because it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like just the perfect pick and roll dynamic. And then they love playing Spida and Evan Mobley together, who's like their 2 best players, just 2 guys that can go out there and kill you in so many different ways, both of them on the ball or off the ball. So that's something I love, especially because then the other 2 guys can catch a little bit of a rest on the bench while the other 2 cook. But I mean, yeah, this team is still, at the end of the day, very young. Evan Mobley's going into year 5. So, I mean, a lot of room to grow there for him. And Donovan Mitchell is my favorite player in the league, so I don't say this lightly. There is a world where Evan Mobley is the best player on the Cavs next season. That is definitely within the realm of possibility. I'm not sure, maybe that's more realistic for a couple more years down the road. But yeah, I mean, I'm just, another reason I project this team to finish first is I just think they're going to keep getting better, mainly because of their age.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge Mobley guy, and I mean you're right about the staggering point. I mean, even though they are a great starting 5, I mean, like Mobley and Allen do play a lot of minutes without each other, and I mean that just gives you like solid, like almost guarantees you like close to 48 minutes of top tier, like top 10 pretty much level center play, which is such a big thing in this league. And yeah, I mean, this team, I think the jump this year was largely due to the breakout of Evan Mobley, which we've been waiting for a couple years, which finally just came, and it was so beautiful. We saw flashes of it in kind of that series against the Celtics from the year before, and then this year he just came out as like honestly better than I could have even like projected, like full fledged. Like he was like a good playmaker this year, is able to like at his size, like the guy can like put the ball on the ground, make good passes. He's starting to extend his range, which is like really scary. He is a guy who, I mean, I agree with you about the Mitchell thing. I mean, maybe next year is a little bit advantageous, but like eventually he will be the best player on this team. I do think that he has like that top 10 upside in him for sure. He's like such a dynamic player and he's only going to get better. You're right. Like but the other thing that also fueled this breakout from this team was the like play of Darius Garland, who is just nasty, man. The guy is like such an efficient, like fun point guard. He has such a good handle. He's so fast and just athletic, and he plays like he just plays like so well, and like he's able to scale his game up. He's able to scale it down, like play off the ball, play on the ball. He's awesome. He almost reminds me a little bit of like a I mean, not to the same level of like skill, obviously, but a little bit of flashes of Kyrie in there, just with his ability to kind of mold to the situation and obviously able to shoot it super well. He was super efficient from beyond the arc this year, which was great and something that this team needed. I love those two, and then I mean Mitchell is obviously like a guy who in the regular season he scaled down a little bit, which was obviously helped propel those two breakouts. But a guy who can just turn it on exactly when you need, and a guy who's kind of always going to be there in the playoffs, like your boy Brunson. I'm super confident in him as like a guy who I want him with the ball in his hands, like creating a shot in the fourth quarter. Like he just, I mean, he there I know there was like a weird little narrative about him like being like a playoff like sinker for like a couple of years after like some of those weird Utah teams that got trotted out. But I mean, I trust Mitchell in the clutch. I mean, I don't know how much I trust Jared Allen in the clutch after these past couple of seasons. I think that's probably my biggest question with this team now. As I mentioned before, they do have almost my hesitation a little bit, and it's not a hesitation. I have them at number one. But what draws me back from completely being like all in, like they're clear cut above the rest, is just does come down to a little bit of that wonkiness again. When you have uh I mean, Mobley and Allen, not necessarily as much, but you do have the two defensive liabilities in the backcourt, which is a little gets a little dicey in the playoffs. Rather than the Knicks, I mean, they do have like two star like defensive like all NBA level, all defense level centers, which I mean, obviously is the most important position on the defense. And I mean, Mobley, I mean, he could be a great rim protector, but he's also so great as that help man. So that's always going to provide a great floor for this defense. But you do have to worry a little bit about those two guys getting picked on defense. But I also loved them bringing in DeAndre Hunter as a piece that just fits in perfectly with this team. I mean, he's like that legit 3-and-D wing that I mean, people have wanted this team to acquire for so long, and he fits perfectly into that lineup. I'm super excited to see a full season of him there. They do lose Ty Jerome, but they which is a loss. He wasn't his best in the playoffs, but was a very efficient and effective bench point guard in the regular season. But they replace him with Lonzo Ball, who I think can definitely fill in as a replacement there and do pretty much everything that you're asking from Jerome. But I mean, health is undoubtedly going to be a question with him. They bring in Larry Nance, right? I think he was an addition from this offseason, so not bad there. As some depth in the front court, but yeah, I mean it's hard not to have the Cavs as your top team in the East after this this regular season, winning like historic 64 games. They're a great team, definitely a contender, definitely a team that I can see bringing it home. I'd have them overall in that top kind of four-ish of the contenders between them and Houston. I do think I'd have them below like a Denver or a OKC in terms of contenders, just because I do have some of those slight questions. But I mean, the talent is just brimming with this team, and like you said, I mean, Mobley just like that's. I don't want to call him an X factor because he's given gonna be like nasty, but how much better he gets is really just gonna it's just gonna propel this team further and further along and to shiny glimmering future for the Cavs.
Yeah, absolutely agree with a lot of that, man. We're both huge Evan Mobley guys here, as you can see. I mean, I expect him to keep getting better, and I look forward to that next season. Going into their backcourt a little bit, if anyone ever tells you Donovan Mitchell's a playoff sinker, I would advise just pointing and laughing, because this is a guy who has the third highest playoff scoring individual performance of all time with his 57 points in the bubble against Denver. But I mean, he countless times has had to put his team on his back in the postseason, and the team himself may have come up short, but he, as an individual, has always shown, and he's someone that I trust to continue to elevate his game in the postseason. Said this before, but Mitchell is my favorite player in the NBA currently. Such a dog. And then diving in a little bit into DG. I like your comparison. May I say a little bit of Darren Williams in a guy
I like
Darius
that.
Garland?
I like that.
A shifty guard who is an awesome playmaker and, of course, can create their own shot at an elite level with their diabolical handle. DG, yeah, like you said, on and off the ball, really good player. And I'm very happy that he had the season he did last year, because the season before that was quite harsh to Darius Garland. He broke his jaw mid-season, and just try to fathom this recovery, guys. Like, DG had to only consume liquids for like 2 months through the regular season when everyone else is in their like top peak mode. And then from having to do that, once he's recovered,
his
you
mouth
hop
was
right back
wired
into
shut.
game speed. His mouth was wired shut. So let's take that into consideration when we talk about the down year that he did have 2 years ago. And he was an all-star before that season too. So
Yeah.
I'm very happy to see him bounce back in the fashion he did, and I'm not surprised at all that he did bounce back.
Yeah.
But
I'm happy to see it too. I remember he was in trade talks after last season, and it ended up being great that they didn't pull the trigger on those. But that about sums it up. Would you say if you had to pick right now, the Cavs would be your team to come out of the East? Gun to your head.
I guess they would be, but obviously my heart wants me to go with my guys.
Right.
If I'm going to be honest, you know this, but just to the viewers, the Cavs are, if I had to pick like a second favorite team in the league, it would be the Cavs. I've always loved, ever since they brought in Donovan Mitchell, I loved this team just because, one, he's my favorite player, and two, I love Mobley, I love DG, I love what they got going on there. So if the Knicks, like, if they lose to the Cavs in the conference finals or something, it's going to sting, but I will probably then turn around and root for the Cavs pretty hard in the finals. But yeah, I mean, gun to my head, I would pick the Cavs, but of course I'll be rooting heavier for my boys to make it out.
Yeah, it would be a really fun series. I know it's been a little one sided in the regular season, but so was Celtics Knicks. So I mean, can't count out the Knicks, but the Cavs.
That's why you play the games.
Yep, Cavs are a great team. We both have them at the top of the standings. You want to run through your list one more time just to reiterate before we get out of here? I can go first if you don't have it.
Yeah, man, I can hop right into it. So starting from the top, I had Brooklyn, Washington, Chicago, Charlotte, and Indiana. And then starting the next tier, these are teams that I project to sneak into the play-in, be around that area. We then had Boston at 10, Milwaukee at 9, Toronto at 8, the Miami Heat at 7, and then the teams that I feel comfortable saying they will be a playoff team, the Philadelphia 76ers, the Detroit Pistons, Orlando Magic, the Atlanta Hawks, and then the Knicks and the Cavs as my 1 seed.
Nice. Pretty similar over here. I think I might make one little tweak to mine after waffling around a little bit when looking at the Raptors. I do think I might have to put them over the Celtics. I mean, I originally did have the Celtics at 9 and the Raptors at 10, but when I was going over it during this and I was looking at the Celtics lineup and then I flipped to the Raptors lineup, it's hard just to not see a pretty significant talent disparity there. I mean, winning history aside, I mean, as much as I want the Celtics to be a good team this year, it is looking rough for them. So let's get into it. I have the Nets at the bottom at 15, the Wizards 14, Bulls at 13, the Hornets at 12, and the Pacers at 11. And I think that is probably its own little tier, like you said there, of kind of outside looking in teams. Like if all things go right, maybe they could make a push towards the play-in, but nothing much. And I certainly don't really think any of those teams are making the playoffs. The Nets and probably the Wizards, I wouldn't even consider close to the play-in. Definitely not the Nets. But in that next tier, I would start with the Celtics at 10, then I'd go to the Raptors at 9, the Heat at 8. I think I'd maybe rope the Bucks into that, but I do think I have a little more confidence because of Giannis. So I think I'd just keep those 3 kind of weird middling teams there as kind of fringe playoff teams looking to get in and won't make much noise in the actual playoffs. Then I think kind of lower tier playoff teams that if all things go right, maybe they could win a series, make a little noise, would be the Bucks, who I have at 7, and then the Sixers and the Pistons, maybe a tier above that. So I have the Pistons at 5, and then I think the Hawks and Orlando are in their own little tier at 4 and 3 respectively, and I think that the top 2 teams are also in a tier, the Knicks at 2 and the Cavs at 1. And yeah,
Good
I think
stuff.
that'll probably do it. Unless you have anything else to say to the viewers, Lucas.
Yeah, man. I don't know what it is with us filming these podcasts and some little bit of crazy MLB news going on while we're filming these.
Oh
Second
boy.
straight episode, I'm just throwing in a couple exciting trades that took place while we were filming this. Number 1, for my Mets, we just brought in Ryan Helsley,
Wow.
which I am pretty happy about. I mean, this is a guy who's not had as good of a season as he had in seasons past, but we're still talking about a guy who has over 20 saves already this year, and I like that a lot for the Mets.
The other one's crazy.
Yeah, having both him and Edwin Diaz, feel great about that.
No, I'm saying
And
the
then,
other trade is wild.
Yeah, no, it is. The Phillies bringing in a marquee closer in Joan Duran. Awesome move for Philly. They have been searching for that closer pretty much all season, and it looks like they just landed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just a couple moves that I wanted to mention at the end here that kind of shake up the MLB as we knew it. So,
yeah.
cool stuff.
Those are crazy crazy moves. You're hoping Helsley gets back to his play from years before, but I don't know. Has he kind of come back around this year?
He's been all right.
I know he had a rough start,
hovering around like a 3 ERA, which isn't the best for a reliever, but
yeah,
I mean,
he can get the speed on it.
Yeah, he's still such a flamethrower, and very happy to bring him in. Still over 20 saves this year, so I like that a lot for the Mets.
Good for him. I think, the new situation will probably help out a little bit too. That's super exciting for you guys. I know you're towards the top of are you a wild card right now, or are you at the top of the division?
Wild card, yeah. I believe the Phillies have us beat out right now.
Yep, but that pushes you guys even more
Plus two
more more
teams, yeah.
contentious. So I mean,
We will see.
it'll be exciting to see the MLB playoffs. They're a little whiles away, but
Yeah.
one of these episodes we'll have to have a baseball segment at some point.
Yeah,
Maybe
no, I
maybe
was gonna say,
pre-playoffs we'll talk about it for a little.
I think that's a great call. And guys, if you want to see like baseball content or anything, definitely drop it down in the comments. We'll always read the comments and like pay attention to what you guys want to see. So, of course, we're kind of more centered around the NFL and NBA scene, but we love baseball too. So we'd be happy to do some coverage there if that's what you guys want.
Yep, couldn't agree more. If you made it to the end of the video, thank you so much. This was a monster, but we had a lot to talk about in this interesting Eastern Conference. We're sitting at just 10 minutes over 2 hours, so I think we're going to log off. I need to get something to eat. I'm sure you got stuff to do, Lucas, but thank you guys again for watching. Drop a like, drop a comment. Let us know what we got right. Let us know what we got wrong. And stay tuned for more. We should be coming at you this weekend to talk a little more about some more fantasy football. Get you guys ready for the season. Drafts coming up. That'll be all. Let's
Look
go.
forward to it.
All right.